welcome back. After a lunch, will be quite heavy, right, to moderate. Maybe we can have first a nap and then return. What do you think? Yeah.
Sounds like a plan.
Exactly. I will be honest with you, this is really my favorite topic of the day. We speak about the metaverse and how Mark Zuckerberg will steal your data, right, and your profile and the rest of it. Of course not. I mean, what I learned about the metaverse and what majority of people thinks is when you mention metaverse, we equally think about Facebook and how Mark will actually do that, what I mentioned previously, which obviously isn't the case. So, in overall, I would say our mission today to the audience is to explain what metaverse can do, because really so openly and frankly, I'm a big metaverse fan, big blockchain fan, big crypto fan, involved in all of that. And that's why I would say we can really drive a very nice conversation today. Who we have today? We have Mark Benthin, the founder of VIIHEALTH. Mark, how are you?
Very well, thanks, Dario. Looking forward to it. Great session so far.
Thank you. And we have Julien Pahud from Lilly. Same question.
Absolutely perfect. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. So then let's answer the first question. Will Mark really steal our data? And of course, what is the metaverse?
Well, I would say no, it will not steal it. Actually, if we shape it, and that will take a village and a collective effort, and I think it's a key important element, not to think as metaverse as one company or one solution, but actually if it's a true distributed effort and our data, as you were mentioning the word blockchain, is indeed protected in blockchain, I would argue that it might actually be a much better and safe for data experience than what it is today. We are just not realizing what's going on.
So that's the Web 3.0.
Exactly.
Which we are actually trying to achieve, and somehow this equals to the metaverse, right?
It will be part of it.
Fantastic. Mark?
I would definitely agree, because then you're following along those protocols for security and for safety and privacy, and you're finding a way to put them under control without necessarily being reliant on individual companies that maybe are at different levels of privacy management in the current status, even though we're all following similar protocols. There's different approaches and doorways for hackers to come in. But there is an approach to the collective that could work very well from an internet backbone.
And let's set foundations. What is and what isn't metaverse? So, Julien?
Oh, that's a good question, because it's something that's being built. So as I said before, it is not one thing that's fixed. It's not one company. It's more, I think, I was just looking up one of the definitions, but it's meant to be a convergence where our personal, in real life and digital life can converge for a set of activities. So this is something that would be across many platforms, that could be across many areas, etc. But that's really this place where we have this kind of, instead of us turning to the internet, that's a central thing, as is the internet 2.0, it's more like we can blend between the two, and we are much more, I would say, active player into it. That would be my very, very quick definition.
So decentralized and transparent.
Yes.
Decentralized, transparent, and this combination of real and virtual in such a way that we should not be thinking it as just the sandlot or just the cryptocurrency who dives every week, right? We have to.
But that's normal.
That's normal. We have to be thinking it as the availability and accessibility of information that's being brought forward to our fingertips in as fast a way as possible and as private a way as possible, so that we can achieve whatever it is that we're trying to achieve. So think of Google search, but on steroids. So how can we go further to get that information and to have the learning come through experience? So I think there's great opportunities for certain kinds of applications within this metaverse environment over the next 10 years. Will it take 10 years? Will it take 20? Yeah. Is it an evolution that's happening along omnichannel? Those are all questions that we would.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, especially I would say from the infrastructure perspective, we still miss the infrastructure. We don't have computing power, we don't have high internet, which is very crucial for the metaverse, for AI, right? For proper AI, actually, you need at least 6G, let's call it so. And we are currently in a actually 5G environment, right?
Yeah, but I still believe that will be something interesting. And here, that's just me talking. But there would be an interesting phase where we have the two that will be living in parallel. Because there might be actually some metaverse experience in spirit that don't require the level of sophistication, either from computing power or even from AI, that some of the most advanced Web 2.0 experiences we are talking require. So there would be these two phases, but long term, definitely. But it will take time, and it will be also interesting to see what is getting successful, what is shaped, because it can go in many directions.
Certainly. Mark?
And if we look at the word personalization, we've heard a lot about personalization today. Amazon popularized personalization in 1999, 2000, and used that and continued to develop with personalization over the last 20-odd years. The metaverse is that kind of approach as well, in parallel to all this improvement in computing and personalization, is this ability to bring resources to have an experience that is different and engaging in both the virtual and the real world. So I see that as being a parallel process, not something that we're waiting for a particular date, December 25th, 2033. The metaverse is there.
I write it down.
Step by step along the way.
Okay, thanks a lot, Mark. Let's become concrete. Imagine you are in the metaverse, you're a pharma company, and invite a GP to a congress to Thailand. He puts his glasses on, his VR, and you interact like you have some drinks, you meet the other HCPs in that very nice sunset or in Dubrovnik, whatsoever. So let's speak about the real use cases where pharma can benefit. In my personal opinion, this is certainly patient monitoring, this even clinical trials. I mean, it's absolutely huge how we can benefit out of the metaverse. Julien.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting, and I would have answered differently earlier this morning, but what we were discussing, and I think it was a highlight also from this morning, is we still crave the in-person. So actually, I would not be sure that, a congress, virtual congress, this is exactly one of the places where HCP, they go there to learn, they go there to interact with human beings, they know that they will meet pharma, etc. So actually, let's switch the table and see that actually more in the day-to-day where HCP is there to treat patients. And whenever they have time, less and less, they might be willing to save time for a pharma rep. With access decreasing, the pharma rep will have less and less contact, so they might be driving 500 kilometers a day to see an HCP that at best has not good quality time, is not really, because it's not the right moment, or simply, and I've seen that back in my days as a sales manager, they simply tell you, oh, sorry, but not today, and go back home. So here, in that setting, think completely differently. Now, the HCP doesn't have his calendar cluttered with appointment with pharma reps. No, it's just that I have my day, and if I have a question, I have 15 minutes now, I will go in the metaverse. I put my goggles on, I will be starting to tag what I'm interested in. So here also very interesting shift versus us as the industry that will segment and will decide what is the content we push. Even if we try to push it, to tailor it, etc., that's still something us beating the drum. Here, no. And blockchain would be a great to enable this matchmaking, because you go there, you put your goggles, and I'm interested in therapeutic area, those topics, etc., interaction, etc. Then, and it's not advanced AI, it's simple matchmaking, and if you have good tagging, then you have one of your rep that's in the metaverse. As the rep was waiting, instead of being idle in the car, having useless time, bad for the planet, he's there, he can continue educate himself or herself, trying to be even more proficient, to be better, so you can imagine. Then they get this notification, good matchmaking, smart contract, we will be having this talk with that physician across this time. That's already, a complete change of balance, and something where actually for HCP, it would be huge value adding versus in a congress. But it doesn't stop there. What would be extremely beautiful, it's also when we think targeting and segmentation, and also the quality of the time, because what's in it for the HCP to go there? You have this match. I was interested in that. I saw that rep. That rep was ill-prepared, just tried to shove his detail aid his virtual detail aid down my throat. It was a huge loss of my time. 2 stars. Next time I go on the metaverse, I will be sure that I only want to talk to 5-star rep, regardless of the company, etc. You see the thing? It can be actually really a good way to increase the quality, be an incentive for the rep to invest in creating those quality customer experience. So I see it as a very simple use case from a technical standpoint, because it doesn't require outstanding 3D, etc. It just need infrastructure to do the matchmaking, but it would require, a village for people to go there, people to be bold to accept that I have one of my rep spending 1 day per week in that place, etc. So it's more the human part that's a
So at the end, the rep will ask the HCP, 5 stars, please, right?
Well,
like an Uber driver, so.
Well, they can, but they would need already to get there at the beginning.
Actually, very good answer, but what bothers me still is we speak about, let's say, the HCP of the future, and we all know that the new generations, they TikTok, they pay in crypto, they are completely different. They even travel less. So maybe metaverse actually works for them.
Yeah, it does. That's an interesting one. And sorry to holding the mic, but I was doing a lot of work. It's something when we talk, and I know we're not supposed to talk about digital transformation, but I would say for many industries, digital transformation took place already in the 90s because their customers, their paying customers, were the ones that were born with that. Here, for HCPs, they need to go through very long studies. Then they need to do residencies, etc. So by the time, I think I made the calculation, but currently, it's less than 20% of digital native HCPs, but within the next 5 years, it will be the majority. So we are also at that linchpin, to your point.
Yeah, exactly. New generations are approaching, right? Mark?
Well, I think you have to look at the criteria around the experiences to identify the right use cases to start with. And if you look at where people will want to get engaged, it's those things that are convenient. It has to be better than the alternative method. So the alternative method used to be, okay, go find the right book, look up the right text, try and read it, understand it, etc. Now we're getting some form of information, some form of searching capability to be able to reach out and find it. But what if there's an application where the appropriate training can be through smart contracts provided to you? Okay, this is the right way to handle either the dosing or the application or the information follow-up or whatever it might be in terms of a training perspective. And those are tailor-made applications for this kind of complex set of tools, if they're convenient. And so I think that has to be maintained as being not only ask the customer what they want, which is what we covered off as advice this morning, but also making sure that how they can receive it is as convenient as possible. It has to be as simple as, putting a pair of glasses on, let's say, but without having to reconnect them or find out where they need to plug in and all those other details that make something very tedious to deal with from an electronic age perspective. So if we focus on convenience, then we'll find the right lead applications. Generally, it's going to be in this industry, I would suspect, around training and learning. Specific information that's for a specific audience, very detailed, where you need to go over and above just reading a few points in an email. That will be the good core basis and be able to connect physicians with other physicians potentially, or with leading providers or KOLs within the environment and transform the kind of experiences that they would have virtually.
Or even properly digital key opinion leaders, right?
Digital key opinion leaders are fine.
Yeah, because actually there are a couple of doctors who are on TikTok already having a couple of million followers. So how Pharma is actually reacting on that?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, and I think it was interesting since, and it's beyond the metaverse or whatever, but it's really this trend that I think it took COVID for pharma to realize that patients have a very active role in their health, beyond just, once they are prescribed, so that they will be looking at the different type of opinion leaders from different sources. It can be HCP, but it can also be, there can be health opinion leaders that are not HCPs, and that's something that we have two options. Either we play blissfully blind and we didn't acknowledge that, which is a very high risk proposition, or we recognize that, try to understand, try to explain the different aspects to it, and to work when it's possible, to collaborate. I think that will be one of my leitmotifs for these days, but it really takes us to understand who are the emerging new players that are not traditional, we are not used to working with, and how can we collaborate with them, because it will not take one vertical of the industry to be able to shape it.
Thank you, Julien. Mark?
What I like about the sort of TikTok notion is, and combine that with the metaverse, is if you take access to the wealth of information, if you look at the videos on TikTok, within 15 seconds, you can actually learn something specific within your field of interest. It doesn't need to be what everybody else is interested in, but within 15 seconds, it's been proven that you can gain some new knowledge and then go even deeper. So what's interesting there is that if you're able to bring the right level of knowledge of using personalization and the data around what physicians are interested in and participating, then you can each step in those bite-sized chunks that they have during the day, take them further in their overall understanding. And what are we trying to do? We're trying to get the right information to the physicians at the right time so that they can best understand how to treat the next patient that comes in the cabinet. And being able to do that in a way that is encouraging and helps to learn more at the level of depth of interest that they are. This is not surface information, it's deep information. That's I think, very inspiring from an application type in the metaverse, however it's presented. It's not necessarily just, again, 3D in the sandlot. It's about bringing multimedia together to have that right full experience.
Thank you, Mark. Honestly, I still think it's very abstract to the audience in overall when we speak about the metaverse. So maybe to be even more concrete, how to start the journey of implementing a real metaverse use case and to implement it into the whole omnichannel strategy?
Yeah, of course, it's abstract because it doesn't exist. So I think, and as I said before, we will be living in two parallel realities, but we need to shape. Actually, one thing I read, and I would recommend anyone who's interested in the metaverse, there are a couple of really good white papers or summaries, couple of pages. One that I liked from JP Morgan had a couple of those tips at the end. And one I really loved is more like, look within your organizations. There is certainly a younger associate that's passionate about gaming, or someone that's dabbling with crypto, etc. But that's truly passionate about it, that's already looking at it, that will bring a fresh perspective. And that's actually a perfect way. You want to start. You need first to educate internally. I will actually talk about it tomorrow, but really the journey it takes before an idea even goes outside to be tried out is super long in our traditional industry. So really creating this passion, this movement in-house, and then really doing the matchmaking. It cannot be one bold project that will boil the proverbial ocean. But once you understood, once you have people that have this passion, really do the matchmaking between, okay, what is a business problem that our understanding of the metaverse could solve? Is it something that will have sufficient sponsorship at a local level to go through all the hurdles that will absolutely come, etc.? And do we have the right people to work on it, to drive it, because it will be extracurricular. So I think it's really finding those smaller experiments to try to shape it, to create the networks, because by doing that they will encounter other companies that are there as well, and they can start shaping those experiences. So it's really this curiosity and bringing perhaps also associates that are not in the spotlight, giving them their due visibility and their due voice.
Mm-hmm. It makes me think, actually, since the metaverse should be decentralized and it can't be owned by anyone, potentially, actually, we could also have an even more direct link to our customers, to our stakeholders, right? Would that be possible, or you think that somehow it would be regulated at the end of the day? I mean, it's, of course, a theory question, but in any case, what do I think about that?
Oh, personally, absolutely. I think that's a key point that's very important. And we should have that more direct link, but also more changing relationship. As I said, the concept in the metaverse, the concept of target list should be almost flipped upside down. But on the other hand, if we are talking about HCPs, definitely we could have those more one-to-ones relationship based on this evolving nature. But now thinking of patients, actually think, real-world data, patient monitoring program. Then if you start to, instead of asking a third party, there are a couple, I will not name them, but there are third parties that are selling us data that don't belong to them, that belong to patients, for us to have some very, very lagged insights, usually 6 months unfresh insights, and aggregated here, you tokenize the money you pay those third parties, you just pay to the patient who are the rightful owner of their data, and they understand, they have full traceability about what's going on, so they would be more likely to share, and it would be live. That's definitely something that's extremely promising and exciting, and it's beyond the metaverse. This is just here about the decentralization and distribution of data.
Thank you, Mark.
You asked about the concrete applications to get started. I think you mentioned it earlier, which is the key opinion leaders. At the end of the day, it's about getting that information to be expressed in a way that physicians can properly receive it. There may be some other aspects of trust and data management that need to be handled on the patient side that perhaps put that on a secondary path. But we've already got these core applications that are part of the omnichannel world today. They just need to keep going in terms of what's the refinement, what's the next innovation that we think is worthwhile that will help us to get to scale or get to the communication or make sure that we're reaching the physicians in the right way and build it forth. And I think that KOL experience, everything around live plus virtual plus that slide material, et cetera, that digital key opinion leader is the right place to go to get started because it's the best place for training, for knowledge sharing, to get physicians engaged in that next step. So it might go through a few iterations to be able to get to real, true metaverse experience, but I think that's the easiest place to get going.
So as a conclusion, start small, tiny steps, baby steps, and then scale, right?
Yeah,
Once the technology is ready, we will be there.
Yes, and be curious. I think it's really the important part is, looking through the hype, trying to really understand the true use case that would matter to the patients. I think it is a general healthy rules, but that's really something that's important.
Thank you. Mark, anything to add on?
Absolutely, and however anybody says that this might be a stake in the ground for 10 years out, it's actually already here in some version today, and we need to have that in our minds, because one of the concerns that we would have is there was a big change with the pandemic in terms of our approach to digital and our early transformation and the speed of that. Now, what's the rate of continuous change? We need to do continuous improvement in digital in order to keep that pace up so we can get to the levels of customer engagement that we would like to have, rather than just kind of slow down again. Even though we've changed, we don't want to go more slowly. We want to actually continue at a certain pace that makes sense for the organization to continue to evolve down this digital highway.
Thank you. Questions? Don't be shy. The metaverse is a reality, so you can ask now. Okay, please. The microphone is coming.
Thanks. Hi. So I was one of the ones who invested in Second Life back then. How sure are you that this is not just Second Life again?
Good question.
Well, I think, as I've mentioned a couple times, if we're just looking at one expression, like the Sandlot or NFTs, I think we're missing what is the fundamental infrastructure. It's privacy, it's some kind of controlled exchange, it's the ability to combine virtual plus real at the same moment with some element of sauce of 3D. So it's not necessarily I'm going to go and spend time in Second Life and spend all of that time. I personally won't go spend a lot of time, but when it's convenient and when the information can be delivered that I'm looking for quite quickly, and the exchange of my information need versus what I get as the result is good and interesting, then absolutely I'll spend the few minutes of time, if I'm a physician, I only have a few minutes, in order to get that winning. So I don't think that the current expression of what the marketplace might be doing today is exactly where it makes sense for us to go. It's useful for packaged good advertisers, Coca-Cola's and the likes, to be able to brand and participate, since they're just meeting people where they are. But I think here we've got to go a little bit further. There is something of value that we're trying to provide to patients and physicians, so it should be on that path that we maintain our value.
Absolutely, and I can only concur, but that's also exactly why we need to understand it, and we need to dip our toe in the water, because at the moment, the drum is beaten by gaming industries that are much more advanced and trying to take it. So this is what we want, that's where we see the hype. But for us, if we let them define what the metaverse is, it will be like that. But if we start, as Mark was rightfully highlighting, all those elements, and we start looking at them for the patients, start developing them, experimenting on a small scale, that gives us a better chance. Is it a sure thing that it will not be Second Life, a second life, if you allow me the pun, but we don't know. But if we don't try, or if we let someone else dictate the rhythm, we definitely be sure that it will not be what we want and need. So that's the interesting part, and a bit the catch-22 in this one.
And I think also, to add on to that, technology changes at a certain pace, and it will continue to change at a rapid pace, but we don't need to worry about the core development of the underpinning technologies, since we're this is based upon Web 3.0 capabilities that are a larger development community. So we don't have to create water. Water will exist. It's more about manipulating and shaping the actual experience that we want to do with the water. And that's something that is an environment where we can play in with relatively limited investment to be able to dip the toe and to start moving, which is very gratifying. This is not 20 years ago where you would have had to spend a ridiculous amount of money even to achieve the basic minimum. Here, with a reasonable budget, one's able to try something out.
Any other questions? Haider, please.
Thanks for the conversation. How do we believe that tomorrow the experience could be, let's say, established by the industry and not by patient, or defined by patient, where you see, for example, communities that created, I would say, experiences, like you mentioned the gaming industry, right? When you started to see people streaming their game, right? So tomorrow, what will happen if all the experience is basically streamed live, as a patient? How can we as an industry capture that moment and not being dragged? Because you define it as a risk. How can we prevent ourselves? Should we just try and fail in that space? Or should we basically find a partner or find someone or a community that will lead the path for us? That's my question.
Well, that's a spot-on question. That's my very strong belief is that we need to be curious to be part of it. I think the first cardinal sin, you talked about music. I always think about some board meetings in Los Angeles in 1998 when they were like, oh, digitalization, that will cut the recording cost and we will not have to burn those CDs. Oh, those Napster guys, anyway, it's illegal and we don't bother. No, absolutely. We need to understand what are those different things, but we need to be curious. That's the first thing. By being curious, we need then to understand and to sort out looking in the ecosystem, who is playing, try to work with them, understand what they do. I truly believe that it will be not defined, at least in healthcare, by us, by the industry. But if we partner, as we said, imagine a record label that was partnering with Napster instead of waiting. There would be no Spotify today. They would be the ones that would have created it.
Because in this whole game, there is this whole community about biohackers, people calling it not healthcare, sick care, and COVID expanded this whole side of the community. I would not call it the dark side of the community, but there is a strong voice saying there is another way to approach healthcare to basically delay the need even for certain types of treatment, which could be dangerous, by the way, right? I like what you said. You said there is a healthcare professional and health opinion leaders, and it seems that the best way to fight something is to join it in a way. So this is a message I'm getting from you. It's quite a competitive claim. I didn't want to make it competitive, but the starting point of that journey, I'm struggling to find what could be the immediate value for us. Where I talk for Pharmaceutical, where we sell molecules, right? If I go to my chief commercial officer and tell him, yeah, we need to invest hard on the metaverse, he will slap my face, right? He will say, yeah.
Have you tried?
Yeah. He will say, well, what drugs are you on, right? So you see, so I'm trying to maximize capturing value with the metaverse. What does it mean? And I think you mentioned it a little bit more in terms of the infrastructure. This basically is transposing what could be a transfer of value that happens in real life, extending it thanks to another platform in the digital life. I think I feel more compelled by that side of the story than the experimental side of the story, because for me it's a hard fail as a pharmaceutical industry if I try to pitch that to my C-level execs, right? So that's just point, where I feel there is kind of a sense of realism we need to have to do a baby step here.
Yeah. That's a good point, yeah.
No, that's a good point. And just to join, I was in some meetings in my early days in blockchain when I was the guy from Pharma in a meeting with crypto anarchists. That was interesting, interesting place to be. But definitely there is a bit, and there is a line in the sand that at some point it's about understanding and building some bridges, but there are some lines that we cannot cross. But I'm still and you can kill me for that, but I'm still an optimistic, is that if we don't try, to build, at least if we are the one who try to build the bridge and the bridge we cannot push it to some extremes, but at least we can try, and it's better than being completely, utterly oblivious.
And making those choices of that initial step are important. Is it on the physician side? Is it on the patient with a rare disease community, which would translate likely really well to this kind of environment? Because when patients are dealing, or caregivers are dealing with a rare disease, the thirst for knowledge and experience is so huge that they need to be able to get on top of it, to become as expert as the experts. And so, what is the right place to start for that next baby step? I think it is important to dialogue on how big that step should be in the current organization, and what is the metric that we're trying to improve. At the end of the day, it feels like it should involve something around customer engagement. If the physicians are not there, well, then that's not the right step to do on the physician side. So we do have to make that right step, as we did in the early days of digital and omnichannel. We made certain steps, and it took a certain number of those steps to then arrive at any kind of speed. It will be the same thing here, but we do have to have that conversation up front as to what's the right next piece, and I don't think it's the third life. I don't think that is what we want to do. It certainly devalues the investment of the industry and the role of trust that the industry should have in providing information that's sanctified to those that can actually handle it. So I would suggest that we kind of use that as a barometer for deciding on the first couple interactions.
Gentlemen, we have to stop. Great conversation and discussion. Looking forward to the next one. Julien and Mark, thanks a lot. And looking forward to Simon.
Thank you very much. Thank you.